welcome back to another video. About 4 years ago, I made my partner this hoodie right here. He loves it so much that he has been asking me for about the last 3 years and 11 months to make him another one. Finally, I penciled some time in my schedule to make him one and bring you along with me. This week, I'm going to be making him a new version of the exact same hoodie, and today I am going to be using a very similar fabric. It is also from Minerva. They kindly sent it to me for free in exchange for a post on their website. It's showing up a little lighter on camera, but it's actually like a really pretty like mint green. It's really soft and has the like nice fleecy backing. I will be linking this down below so you can go and check it out. And my partner picked the color, so he got what he wanted. And I also have a little bit of this fabric right here, which is for the waistband and the cuffs, and this is their tubular ribbing stretch knit fabric in the color Bright Knit. I have about ½ meter of that. For pattern, I am going to be using the exact same pattern that I used for the original one, and that is the Burda 6718. Hopefully I can make a more neat and more perfect version of this hoodie. I will also leave it linked below for you. Then I have a little bit of cording, and this is for the little ties inside the hood. I have like a little bit less than what the pattern says because I had this in my stash. Don't know. I think it's going to be enough. I also have one of my tags in here, and we have a couple of eyelets which are going to be used for the cording channel. So we're going to whip this one up. Then at the end, we're actually going to have a little show and tell of the inside of the garment, of both the one I made 4 years ago and the one that I will have just made. And I think it will be really interesting to share that side with you of like how far I've come in 4 years. Sewing is a skill that you learn through practice. Anyway, I'm gonna pick everything up off the floor and move on over to the desk. First, I'm folding my fabric with right sides together along the selvages, and for this fabric, it's very easy to know because the wrong side will be really fluffy. And then I'm going to lay it out on my desk, and I'm getting my pattern pieces ready. Since I've made this pattern a couple of times before, all the pieces are already cut out. But of course, if you're making it for the first time, you'll need to cut out or trace them along the size that you want to make. I'm making view A, so I'll need the pieces that have an A on them. And I'm just laying them out according to the grain line. The front, back, and the pocket all need to be cut on the fold, and then the rest are cut normally. Grain line is actually very important in knits because of how the fabric stretches. But if you would like me to make a video talking about grain lines more in depth, let me know because I'd be quite happy to make one. The tubular ribbing I got comes in a literal tube, which means I can't cut the waistband as the pattern wants me to, which would be once on the fold. As the waistband piece is just a rectangle, I went ahead and folded it in half, and then I cut that smaller piece twice on the fold. That means I will have 2 side seams instead of just 1, but that's not really a problem for me. I also cut out the cuffs from this ribbing. It is much stretchier than the sweatshirt knit, so it's even more important to be on grain when you're cutting. After I cut the waistband and the cuffs, I also cut out all of my pieces from the sweatshirt fabric, which is really satisfying to snip through. And if you watched my other sweatshirt video where I made a little plush fleece jumper, you'll be happy to know that this fabric is considerably easier to work with and leaves no fluff behind after cutting. When I had all my pieces cut out, I started cutting out the notches and marking, but also pinning things as I went. This is my staple batch sewing method where I try to do things in batches as much as I can to make the process more efficient and less time and energy consuming. I did not make up this method, I hope that's clear, I just use it a lot. So here I snipped the notches of the sleeves and pinned the side seams closed with right sides together. On the front piece, I also snipped the notches, and then on the right side of the fabric, I marked the pocket placement. I used a heat erasable pen here that disappears when ironed. It left a very faint line after pressing, but I'm confident it will go away when I wash the garment. To mark the pocket, I poke small holes along the lines I want to transfer on the paper pattern, and then I use the pen to mark those out. and remove the paper, connect the dots with a ruler. The back doesn't require any markings, so I moved on to the hood where I again snipped the notch and transferred the markings for the cording case onto the right side of the fabric. Here I actually used a different method to show you. I used a tracing wheel, which is like a rotating wheel with little spokes on it. Hey buddy! Sorry for the interruption. Okay, I used a tracing wheel, which is like a rotating wheel with little spikes on it. I go over the lines of the pattern with the tracing wheel, and that leaves small indents on the fabric that I can then trace over with whatever marking tool I want. This doesn't work for every fabric though, so do keep that in mind. I also went ahead and pinned the hood pieces together along the rounded outer edge with right sides together. Then I pinned the cuffs closed along the short sides with right sides together, and I'm going to pin the waistband pieces together along those short edges too with right sides together to form a circle. And the last thing I'm going to pin in this batch is my tag to the back piece. Before I start sewing, I'm going to switch my needle over to a knit or jersey needle, which will help the sewing process a lot. If you don't have one, that's okay. Just make sure you're using a brand new needle because a blunt needle will not be your friend. Also, you may want to use a narrow zigzag stitch or a Maraflex thread, but I'm using a straight stitch with a regular thread, so as you can see in my little swatch, so don't worry about it too much. I also used a straight stitch and regular thread for the navy hoodie I made 4 years ago, and no stitches have popped or have needed fixing, so I'm confident it will be okay. I'm now just going to stitch all the things I pinned. I started with my tag and then the waistband side seams and the cuffs, of course making sure that I backstitch at the start and finish of every seam. Next I stitched the hood closed and the sleeves as well. I'm using a 1.5 centimeter or 5/8 of an inch seam allowance as stated on the pattern instructions. Then I moved on to my serger. First, I'm going to finish the angled side edges of the pocket. We want to do this first so we can turn in the seam allowance on those edges, pin it in place, and top stitch it down to form a really neat edge for the opening of the pocket. Oh, and if you have a walking foot, I would recommend you use it for this project because it will make things so much easier. My machine has a built-in walking foot, so I'm using that, and it really does make a difference. Back to the serger, I'm going to neaten all the remaining edges of the pocket, and I'm also going to finish the seam allowances of everything I've sewn so far. Of course, I'm going to press all of those seams as well. I'm pressing things to one side since I serged the seam allowances together. Now I'm going to fold the cuffs in half with wrong sides together, making sure that I am matching up the side seam. And then I'm going to stick the cuff inside the sleeve so that the raw edges are together and match up the side seams. Then I'm going to pin that in place. You'll find that the cuff is smaller than the sleeve, or it seems smaller than the sleeve. So what you need to do is stretch the cuff to fit the sleeve. I like to do this as I pin and then as I sew as well. I'm using magic clips here because I think it's a lot easier for bulky seams, and I just find it helps getting a really good seam match. When I've pinned each cuff to each sleeve, I move on to pin the pocket to the front along those marked lines. To do this, I first fold over the seam allowance of the top and side edges, and I pin that down. And then I place the pocket where I want it and pin it in place when I am happy with the location. You could also press the seam allowance in and then pin the pocket in place, but it's up to you how you decide to do it. Don't worry about the bottom edge. We're going to stitch that down when we do the waistband. Then I move on over to the sewing machine and top stitch the pocket in place, making sure that I am backstitching at the start and finish of each seam so that the pocket doesn't come off. And to sew the cuffs in place, I remove this little attachment of my sewing machine that I don't know the name of, and then for some reason I proceeded to not stick the sleeve in there and just sew it like this. I don't know. Anyway, I finished the seam allowances of the cuffs on the serger and also neatened the front edge of the hood. Then I pinned the front and back pieces with right sides together along the side seams. I also stitched those seams straight away and serged them. Next, I pressed the seam allowance towards the back and pressed my pockets as well. And lastly, I pressed the seam allowances of the cuffs towards the sleeve. Using a tapestry needle, I'm threading the serger thread tail into the serged seam to create a better finish. I'm only doing this in seams that are like the final seam, if that makes sense. So for example, the ends of the side seams of the sleeves were still going to get serged when I did the cuffs and sew the sleeves into place. So it's not worth the time. But when I'm not doing anything more to that seam, so you know it's the final seam, then I will tuck in the tails. But I will let you know as throughout the video when I'm doing it. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. You may be using a zigzag stitch to finish the raw edges, and in that case, you can backstitch and you won't have this issue. Moving on, I'm going to fold the waistband with wrong sides together like I did for the cuffs, making sure to match the side seams. Then I flip the sweatshirt over to the wrong side, is facing out, and then I pin or clip, in this case, the waistband to the bottom edge of the sweatshirt, matching the side seams and making sure that I'm catching the bottom edge of the pocket. Just like for the cuffs, we'll need to stretch the waistband to fit, and I'm going to do that while I pin it in place. And while I sew that seam, I am making sure that I'm keeping the waistband stretched to fit the sweatshirt. I prefer having the piece I'm stretching at the bottom while I sew, but I know that some people prefer it the other way around. Either way is fine, as long as it works for you. Then I serge that raw edge and tuck the tail of the serger thread in before pressing the seam allowance towards the waistband. Now I'm going to pin the sleeves to the sweatshirt with right sides together, making sure to match the notches and the seams. The notch on the sleeve should be toward the front of the sweatshirt, where it would line up with the notch on the front piece. Next, I stitched that in place. These raglan kind of sleeves are some of the easiest to do, so I found this really enjoyable. Plus, it's really exciting to see the garment coming together. Obviously, I serged those seam allowances after I was done sewing and pressed them in place. Now I just need to finish the hood. Before any more sewing occurs, I have to insert the eyelets. I'm using this wooden disc that is mostly a decorative piece on my shelves, but does come in handy sometimes, and a towel to keep the noise down and protect the wood. I also grabbed a hammer and my eyelet tool, which came in this set from Hemline. I will be linking it below, and an awl. I used the awl to poke a hole in the marked location on the hood, but because of the thickness of the fabric, I also used my scissors to make the hole a little bit larger. I did have to reread the instructions because it's been a while since I used it. Anyway, the kit comes with a white plastic piece that has two metal attachments, one on each end. One of the end comes off, and then you place that on the towel or the surface you're using. Then you have your eyelet in the hole of the fabric, and the big eyelet piece is the one that you stick through the top so that that's the visible one, and then the washer goes at the back. That then gets placed onto the metal attachment on the towel, and the plastic one goes on top. You want the washer to be facing you so that the eyelet goes on the attachment at the bottom. Then you hammer that in place until your eyelet is bent over the washer. I find one hard hammering is better than a lot of less powerful ones, but test this out on a scrap piece before you actually commit to the final garment. Once I had both the eyelets in, I moved on to making the cording channel. To do that, I first folded the outer edge in along the fold line and pinned that in place. Then I tucked the serged edge under to form a kind of hem, and I pinned that in place too, using the serger thread as kind of a guide to keep it all even. Next, I top stitched that in and pressed it. I lined up the cording channels on both sides on top of each other and stitched that down in the seam allowance. You can baste it in place by hand, but I think it takes longer and it's less secure, so I just did it this way. To pin the hood to the sweatshirt with right sides together, I find it easier to flip the shirt inside out and then stick the hood inside. I used my clips to pin it in place, matching up the notches and making sure that I clip the seams down in the direction that I want them to be sewn in. Okay. Then I sewed that in place and serged the seam allowance, leaving a tail to tuck in later. I tucked the serged thread in and pressed the seam allowances towards the sweatshirt. And the last thing I have to do is actually get the cording into the channel. So I got the cording out and taped one end with like regular clear tape, like sellotape or scotch tape, whatever you call it. I like to make it a bit pointy towards the end of the tape. All my safety pins were too big to go in the eyelets, as was my bodkin, so the taped edge of the cording is really important here. I'm going to stick the taped edge in through the eyelet on one side and pass the cording through as you would with a safety pin or whatever tool you're using, but using the taped edge as a guide because you can feel it really well. It takes a bit more patience and it can be a bit annoying around the center seam of the hood, but take your time. When you get the cording to the other eyelet, you just have to get the taped edge through the eyelet again, and that is why making the end pointy is really helpful. Then we can remove the tape, tie some knots at the ends of the cording so that we don't have to do that again, and that's it. Now the time you've all been waiting for, the side-by-side comparison. Okay, so I'm going to do version 2 first, which is the mint hoodie that I just made. The side seams of the shirt and waistband are perfectly aligned. The top stitching on the pocket is super neat and straight. The seam allowances on the inside of the waistband are neat and even. The cuff and sleeve side seams are perfectly aligned and the seam allowances are neat and even too. The sleeve and sweatshirt seam is also perfectly aligned. The hood cording casing is neat and even. The sleeve and sweatshirt seam also aligns on the other side. We have a new tag and very neat seams on the hood. For version 1, the navy hoodie that I made 4 years ago, the pocket top stitching is a lot less even. The waistband is not stitched on evenly, and the inside of this seam is very, very bulky. You can see that this waistband is wider on the side seams than it is in the middle. The serger thread doesn't match the fabric. The sleeve and sweatshirt seams are aligned, as well as the cuff and sleeve seams on both sides, but there are a ton of tucks on the sleeves where I couldn't get the ribbing of the cuff to stretch to size. I suspect that I cut the ribbing on the wrong grain line. With time, the ribbing is going a lot more relaxed and stretched out, which is normal for how much wear this hoodie gets and how old it is. The hood finishes are a lot less neat. The serger thread is coming undone in a couple of spots, and you can see my old tag here. The placement of the overlapping edges of the hood on the front is also imperfect. Okay, this is the finished hoodie. It sews up really quickly. I think I sewed it up in probably like 3 hours, including moving camera angles and all that stuff. So I think that's pretty good. I'm really happy with it. I think it came out really good. An improvement from my last one. It's like a really quick sew that is really satisfying. It's so comfortable. Like, this fabric is so nice. Obviously on me, it's a little bit oversized. The whole time I was making it, I was thinking like, it's not as hard as I remember it being. My partner, he said he really likes it. He tried it on and it fits him really nicely. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed coming along this journey. I will leave everything that I used in this video linked below. Heads up, I have got affiliate links now with Minerva, so that means that if you decide to purchase anything, whether it being these fabrics or other fabrics or anything off of their website, if you use the link that is below, like even if you go and search for something else, if you use my link, then I get a percentage of that sale, and that is going to really help me with keeping this channel running, keep creating content and stuff. And I put a lot of work into the channel. I put a lot of work into all of my content. You don't get any discounts or anything. Everything is the same for you. But for me, I do get a commission on that sale. So if you are considering getting anything from Minerva, yeah, it would be nice if you could use the link. A nice way for you to support me by maybe doing something you're already gonna do. Hopefully, I hope that makes sense. I'm very tired today, so because I didn't really sleep last night, so I feel like I'm rambling. It's still about the affiliate links. Whenever I put anything that is an affiliate link down below in the description, I will let you know that that is an affiliate link, just so you have like full disclosure of everything. That's going to be true on here and also on any other platform that I might use. If it's an affiliate link, I will let you know that it's an affiliate link, so you have the full knowledge of everything. All of that said, I think I have rambled on quite a bit. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you are thinking about making one of these, please tag me because I would love to see your versions of it. And let me know if you have any questions on this make or anything else that I might be able to answer for you. Consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't done that already. It would mean a lot to me. It would really help me out. We're really close to 1,000 subscribers and I'm very excited about that. Consider following me on Instagram or TikTok. I have all of my links for everything down below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and I will see you in the next one.